I was the first African American to grace the cover in 1974.
In 1974, Beverly Johnson became the first Black woman on American Vogue's cover after 80 years of whites-only editions. The headlines celebrated a barrier broken. The paychecks told a different story. While fashion used her image to claim progress, Beverly earned less than her white peers, got reprimanded for requesting Black crew members, and survived on 2 eggs and rice per week. This is what breaking fashion's biggest barrier actually cost Beverly Johnson, and why she's still fighting the same battle 50 years later. Beverly Johnson had 7 glamour covers by 1973. The Buffalo native, daughter of a machine operator and surgical technician, had abandoned her criminal justice scholarship at Northeastern University after Glamour hired her on site during a 1971 college break. Her annual income now exceeded $100,000. Her covers broke sales records. Irving Penn had photographed her. She was ready for the ultimate prize. The path to Ford models felt inevitable. Beverly had conquered every milestone available to a Black model in early 1970s fashion. Her glamour success proved Black models could sell magazines. Her earnings demonstrated commercial viability. Her portfolio showed versatility across beauty and fashion shoots. She walked into Ford's offices with the confidence of someone who'd already proven herself. She told co-founder Eileen Ford she wanted Vogue. "Who do you think you are?" Ford's words carried 80 years of exclusion. Since 1892, American Vogue had never featured a Black woman on its cover. Fashion's beauty ideal centered on blondes with blue eyes and fair skin. The magazine that defined American elegance had maintained an unbroken color line through 2 world wars, the Civil Rights Movement and the social upheavals of the 1960s. British Vogue had shown Danielle Luna in 1966, but America's edition remained untouched. The Atlantic Ocean might as well have been an ideological chasm. What was possible in London remained forbidden in New York. Beverly's background should have prepared her for this rejection. Growing up in Buffalo, she'd experienced racism in subtler forms. Her parents, Gloria, the surgical technician, and her father, the machine operator, had raised her in a middle-class household that valued education and achievement. She'd excelled at swimming, training with the dedication that nearly earned her an Olympic spot. At Northeastern University, she'd been studying criminal justice with plans to become a lawyer. But modeling had interrupted those plans. During that 1971 summer break, she and her mother had traveled to New York on a whim. After several agencies turned them away, Glamour magazine hired Beverly on the spot for a fashion shoot. The immediate success prompted her to leave college. She signed first with Ford Models, the same agency now dismissing her dreams, then later with other agencies as her career grew. Beverly switched to Wilhelmina Models after Ford's rejection. Ford's dismissal reflected industry consensus. Certain barriers weren't meant to fall. The fashion world had its unspoken rules, and the Vogue cover was the ultimate boundary. Black models could appear in magazines, walk runways, book campaigns, but Vogue's cover remained off-limits. It was the difference between being in fashion and defining fashion. Beverly doubled her determination anyway. She understood what Ford couldn't see. The world was changing, and fashion would have to change with it. Wilhelmina Cooper's voice crackled through the receiver at 6 a.m. in August 1974. Beverly was barely awake when her agent delivered news that would reshape fashion history. A Vogue editor had noticed Beverly's glamour work. The decision had been made. Francesco Scavullo had already photographed her. The August issue was hitting stands that morning. The words didn't immediately register. Beverly had been working toward this moment for 3 years, but its arrival felt surreal. She'd done test shoots that went nowhere. She'd heard promises that evaporated. The fashion industry specialized in false hope for Black models. But this was different. This was real. Beverly forgot her wallet rushing to the newsstand. She left her apartment in pajamas, racing through New York's early morning streets. The vendor watched a young woman freeze before the magazine rack. Her face stared back from American Vogue. Jet black hair, olive brown complexion, confident smile. The impossible had happened after 80 years. Standing there, holding the magazine, Beverly felt history's weight settle on her shoulders. This wasn't just a personal achievement. This was a moment that would ripple through time, affecting models she'd never meet, opening doors she'd never walk through. "I had some soul-searching to do," Beverly would later recall. The triumph came with immediate responsibility. She needed to understand who I am, where I came from, and what the struggle is really about. The cover itself was deceptively simple. Scavullo had captured Beverly's natural beauty without exotic styling or dramatic poses. She looked directly at the camera with quiet confidence. No explanatory text marked this as historic. Vogue presented Beverly as they would any cover model, as if Black women had always belonged there. But Beverly knew better. The triumph came with haunting clarity. Why in the world am I the first in 1974? Beverly's phone began ringing before she made it home from the newsstand. Reporters wanted quotes, other magazines wanted bookings, agencies wanted meetings. The model who'd been told, "Who do you think you are?" suddenly had everyone asking who she was. Ruth Whitney called Beverly's breakthrough equivalent to Jackie Robinson breaking baseball's color line. Vogue declared she had broken all color barriers. The Annenberg Space for Photography would cement the comparison, officially dubbing her the Jackie Robinson of modeling. The New York Times would eventually name her one of the 20th century's 100 most influential fashion figures. The pressure was immediate and relentless. At photo shoots, Beverly often found herself teaching photographers how to light Black skin. Makeup artists didn't have products for her complexion. Hairstylists didn't know how to work with her texture. She had to arrive early to solve problems that white models never faced. The industry response to her Vogue cover was swift and revealing. Some embraced change. Beverly became the first Black woman on French Elle's cover in 1975, breaking another barrier. She'd accumulate over 500 magazine covers throughout her career. 3 more Vogue appearances would follow, including the special American Woman issue in June 1975 and another in January 1981. Beverly became the go-to Black model for brands wanting to appear progressive. She was fashion's diversity. When clients booked her, they could check their inclusion box. When she appeared at events, organizers could point to her presence as proof of their openness. The isolation was crushing. At Milan Fashion Week, Beverly might be the only Black model among hundreds. At photo shoots, she was often the only Black person on set, model, crew, or otherwise. At fashion parties, she navigated rooms where she was simultaneously the most watched and most alone person present. Beverly's historic cover came with hidden costs that would take decades to fully reveal. Despite her breakthrough, she earned significantly lower compensation than my white peers. The exact numbers remained hidden. Fashion doesn't publish pay scales. But Beverly knew the truth every time she compared notes with white models at her level. The pay gap was just the beginning. When Beverly requested Black photographers for her shoots, management reprimanded her. When she asked for Black makeup artists who knew how to work with her skin tone, she was labeled difficult. When she suggested Black hairstylists who understood her hair texture, she was told she was being too political. The message was explicit. She could appear on covers but couldn't alter infrastructure. She was allowed to be visible but not vocal. She could break barriers but not challenge systems. Silence on race was then and still is the cost of admission to the fashion industry's top echelons, Beverly would write decades later. But in 1974, she was living this reality daily. Every morning, she woke up knowing she'd be underpaid. Every shoot, she knew she'd be isolated. Every success came with the understanding that speaking up meant losing everything. The psychological toll was immense. Beverly had to compartmentalize constantly. In public, she was the gracious pioneer, grateful for opportunities, never controversial. In private, she dealt with the rage of being systematically underpaid and undervalued. She couldn't share this burden with white models who wouldn't understand or Black friends outside fashion who couldn't relate to her specific situation. Fashion had found a perfect formula. Use Beverly's image for progressive credibility. Keep the money white-controlled. Celebrate her presence while limiting her power. Make her famous but not wealthy, at least not as wealthy as she should have been. Companies inflict harm against Black culture while actively gouging it for inspiration and taking all of the profit. Beverly would observe years later. In 1974, she was living this extraction. Her image generated millions in magazine sales, advertising revenue, and brand value. Her bank account reflected a different reality. Fashion demanded Beverly be chiseled to the bone. The same industry celebrating her for breaking racial barriers was simultaneously destroying her body through impossible beauty standards. Her diet shrank to 2 eggs and a bowl of brown rice weekly. When that wasn't enough, when hunger clawed at her constantly, cocaine became her appetite suppressant. Industry insiders encouraged these extremes. Agents would praise models for losing weight even when ribs were already visible. Designers would send smaller and smaller sample sizes, forcing models to shrink to fit clothes rather than having clothes fit bodies. Photographers preferred the hollow-cheeked look that came from starvation. Anorexia took hold gradually, then completely. What started as discipline became obsession. Counting calories became counting grains of rice. Skipping meals became skipping days. The hunger was constant, gnawing, but the fear of gaining weight was stronger. Then bulimia entered the picture. On days when hunger won, when she ate normal amounts of food, panic would follow. The bathroom became her confessional, where she'd purge both food and guilt. The cycle was exhausting. Starve, break, binge, purge, repeat. One day, stepping from her bath, Beverly caught her reflection and didn't recognize herself. The woman in the mirror was skeletal. Bones jutted where curves should be. Her skin stretched tight over her frame like fabric over a drum. She'd become exactly what fashion wanted, and it was killing her. Her mother's visit changed everything. Gloria Beverly's horror at seeing her daughter's emaciated frame was undeniable. The surgical technician who'd seen bodies in various states of distress knew her daughter was dying. The confrontation was immediate and necessary. "You're disappearing," her mother said. Not just physically, but entirely. Beverly Johnson, the person, was being consumed by Beverly Johnson, the symbol. Fashion was literally consuming her. The industry that put her on magazine covers wanted her to shrink until she barely existed. The contradiction was brutal. They wanted her black face but demanded she eliminate every other trace of herself. Recovery wasn't immediate or linear. Beverly had to relearn how to eat. She had to retrain her brain to see food as fuel, not enemy. She had to rebuild her relationship with her body while still working in an industry that saw bodies as commodities. By 2024, Beverly had maintained 50 years of sobriety from cocaine. She'd overcome the eating disorders that nearly killed her, but the damage, physical and emotional, remained as evidence. Her metabolism never fully recovered. Her relationship with food remained complicated. Her body bore the scars of fashion's demands. The industry that made her famous had nearly killed her. The contradiction was stark. They wanted her black face but demanded she shrink her black body to nothing. They celebrated her as a breakthrough while breaking her down. These health battles happened privately. Fashion doesn't publicize its casualties. While magazines ran triumphant stories about Beverly breaking barriers, she was breaking apart. While designers praised her professionalism, she was professionally starving herself. Publicly, Beverly continued ascending. More magazine covers, bigger campaigns, higher-profile runway shows. Nobody questioned why she looked so thin. In fashion, you can never be too thin until you're dead. Beverly's breakthrough created measurable change in fashion's landscape. By 1975, black models on runways weren't shocking. They were expected. Agencies that had rejected black models suddenly scrambled to sign them. Magazines that had never featured black faces suddenly needed them for credibility. But Beverly understood the superficiality of this change. Fashion had learned to perform diversity without redistributing power. Black models were being hired, but they weren't being paid equally. They were being featured, but they weren't making decisions. They were visible, but not powerful. Naomi Campbell would later credit Beverly with making her career possible. "Beverly Johnson opened the door that I walked through," Campbell would say repeatedly. Tyra Banks acknowledged standing on Beverly's shoulders. Iman called Beverly a pioneer who'd paid the price for others' success. Yet each generation faced similar battles. Campbell would have to fight for equal pay in the 1990s. Banks would have to create her own show to control her image in the 2000s. Iman would have to launch her own cosmetics line because existing brands didn't serve Black women. Beverly watched this repetition with growing frustration. Opening doors meant nothing if the rooms inside remained hostile. Breaking barriers meant little if those barriers were simply rebuilt in new forms. The pattern was consistent. Fashion would celebrate each new Black model as exceptional, extraordinary, unprecedented, language that reinforced the idea that Black beauty was unusual rather than normal. Every Black model who succeeded was positioned as an exception, not an expectation. The industry had learned to monetize diversity without redistributing power. Black models became valuable for helping brands appear progressive. During Black History Month, Beverly's phone would ring constantly with brands wanting her presence to validate their commitment to diversity. The rest of the year, silence. Fashion magazines would dedicate one issue per year to diversity, filling it with Black models, then return to business as usual. Designers would cast Black models during New York Fashion Week, where American media watched, then use all-white casts in Paris and Milan. The tokenism was exhausting. Beverly would arrive at shoots to discover she was the diversity casting. She'd walk runways knowing she was there to prevent criticism, not because designers genuinely wanted her aesthetic. She'd appear in campaigns designed to deflect accusations of racism rather than celebrate Black beauty. 46 years of enforced silence ended with a Washington Post opinions section that shook fashion's foundations. In 2020, as Black Lives Matter protests filled streets globally, Beverly decided she'd been quiet long enough. "Managing racism is one of the things the fashion industry does well," she wrote. The sentence cut through fashion's carefully maintained facade of progressive values. Beverly exposed what insiders knew but never said publicly. Black culture contributes enormously to fashion, but Black people are not compensated for it. Fashion magazines regularly featured Black style, music, and aesthetics, while excluding Black professionals from decision-making positions. Brands profited from Black culture while Black designers struggled for funding. The opinions section detailed discrimination Beverly had never previously discussed. The pay gaps, the isolation, the constant microaggressions, the exhaustion of being fashion's sole Black representative in room after room, decade after decade. But Beverly didn't stop at exposure. She proposed concrete change. The Beverly Johnson rule. Companies must interview at least 2 Black candidates for every position, from entry-level to C-suite. Not quotas, but forced consideration of talent that was being systematically overlooked. The rule addressed fashion's favorite excuse: "We couldn't find qualified Black candidates." Beverly knew this was a lie. Fashion wasn't looking. Her rule would force them to look. Her most direct challenge targeted Anna Wintour, fashion's most powerful figure. Beverly publicly called on Vogue's editor-in-chief to use her influence for systemic change. "She's the most powerful person in fashion," Beverly told Good Morning America. "I'm looking to her." The public pressure was strategic. Wintour had been Vogue's editor since 1988. She'd had decades to diversify fashion and hadn't. Beverly was done waiting for voluntary change. The response was immediate and revealing. Some praised Beverly's courage. Others accused her of biting the hand that fed her. Fashion insiders privately warned she was burning bridges. Beverly didn't care. At 68, she had nothing to lose and everything to say. Other Black models joined Beverly's criticism. Joan Smalls published her own account of fashion's racism. Naomi Anderson exposed pay disparities on social media. Models who'd been silent for career preservation began speaking up. She appeared on news programs discussing fashion's discrimination. She participated in panels about economic inequality in creative industries. She consulted with brands claiming to want change, though she quickly learned to distinguish between those seeking real reform and those seeking publicity. At 70, Beverly was still fighting. Her 2025 induction into Alpha Kappa Alpha honored her activism alongside her modeling. The sorority recognized her as someone who changed the face of fashion and redefined standards of beauty worldwide. But Beverly knew changing faces wasn't enough. She wanted to change bank accounts, boardrooms, and power structures. Her one-woman show, debuting in New York in 2024, told stories she'd never shared publicly. Her best-selling memoir, The Face That Changed It All, revealed the true cost of being first. Beverly's story exposes an uncomfortable truth. Breakthrough moments often serve systems more than pioneers. Fashion got to claim progress while maintaining power structures. It monetized her breakthrough while underpaying her for it. It celebrated barrier breaking while creating new barriers backstage. The three prices Beverly paid for making history still compound interest. Her health, broken by starvation and substances, never fully recovered. Her voice, silenced for decades by an industry that demanded gratitude over truth. Her equal compensation, denied even as her image generated millions in value for others. An industry built on exclusion doesn't transform because one woman makes the cover. It adapts, accommodates, continues. It finds new ways to exclude while appearing inclusive. It creates fresh barriers while celebrating old breakthroughs. Beverly broke fashion's biggest barrier, but the rubble hasn't been cleared. Her legacy isn't just the door she opened, it's her refusal to let fashion close it behind her. Every time fashion tries to declare victory over racism, Beverly reminds them the war isn't over.